Well, good morning and welcome back to the Old Buck Ranch. Today I'm going to shoot a quick video featuring this little camera here. This is a Falcon medium format camera that shoots 127 film. I picked this up at an estate sale a couple of weeks ago and just wanted to take it out and see how it works. This camera was originally manufactured from about 1939 through probably the end of the 1940s. This particular one is a pretty early model because the original ones were manufactured in New York for a couple of years, and then the company was bought out by a conglomerate in Chicago, and they moved the works to Chicago. And I've actually got one here, I'll get a close-up later, that was manufactured in Chicago, and I'll kind of show you that. But so yeah, this camera is in really immaculate condition for its age, and I just wanted to take it out and take it for a spin. So I just wanted you to come along with me. So here we go. All right, just real briefly, these cameras are about as simple as they come. They're made out of the old Bakelite plastic that was, common back in the 30s and 40s, and a lot of these don't survive because the plastic over time deteriorates and it kind of crumbles. But this one is in about as nice a condition as I've ever seen one. I mean, it's clean, it's perfectly intact, and I think it's going to work. So, but yeah, the cameras are really simple. Basically, all you got is a shutter, and it's got a fixed aperture and a fixed shutter speed. So basically, you click this button, and that's it. Probably about 1/30th, 1/50th of a second. And it also has a lever over here that you can switch from what's called time to intermittent. And so time, basically what happens there is you open the shutter and it stays open until you release it. And that's for you to do timed exposures, or if you got low light or whatever and you need more time than 1/50th of a second, then you can keep it open as long as you need to. The key though is it doesn't have a tripod socket, so you have to figure out somewhere to put it that it stays steady. But yeah, it's kind of cool. Now they call these donut cameras and other things, but the reason is because you can see the little round faceplate on the front. This one says Falcon, and the one I've got here, I'll show you in a second, has a different label on it. But these cameras were made by the same company, but they would put all sorts of different named plates or donuts on the front, depending on who they were making them for and where they were sold, which is kind of cool. So this one is not in quite as nice a shape, and but the cool thing about this one, it came with this little, I don't know, it looks like cardboard case. It's very fragile. But just to kind of put these together like this. Now this one is made in Chicago. This is one of the later ones, probably from the 40s. And it says Remington Camera Company. Or I should say Miniature Remington Camera. It's a little more fancy. It's got some like fake chrome embellishments around the lens. The design is a little bit different. Both have kind of an Art Deco design, which is kind of neat. But this one is a little wonky in that it's kind of almost looks like it's melted a little bit, so I'd be somewhat concerned about whether it was light proof or not. But this one I'm not going to shoot today. But still, you can see the difference. This one was made in New York by the Utility Manufacturing Company, and this was made in Chicago. So basically the same exact camera. And so again, this shoots 127 film. We'll see if this picks up on the video. And here's a roll of 127 film. You can still get this online, and this is considered medium format, but I got this other roll of 120 film I wanted to show you as a basis of comparison, show you the difference in the size. So this is 127 film and this is 120 film. It's quite a bit different. Almost, the 120 is almost twice as big. But this is still considered medium format, and it's bigger than 35 millimeters, so that's the distinction. And in the back here, you can see here's your exposure chamber. And this particular camera is considered a half frame camera. So in other words, in a regular 127 camera, this would be twice as big. And so what this does is it gives you the advantage of having double the exposures. So on a typical 127 camera, you get 8 shots on a roll of film. But with this camera, as long as you do it correctly, you would get 16 shots, which is definitely an advantage. The disadvantage here is that the film chamber, or the exposure chamber, is vertical. So when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're shooting in portrait mode. And if you want to shoot landscape, you have to turn the camera vertically to get the landscape orientation, which is probably going to be a little bit tricky as I'm out shooting it. And this one has 2 windows in the back. One has a number 1 and one has a number 2. And this is how you line the film up, because on the back of the film there's numbers, and the numbers correspond to what exposure you're on. So here, what you would do is you would start out on number 1 here. You would take your exposure and then you would wind it on the top until the number 1 moves to the second window. Then you take that exposure and you just continue the cycle. You would wind it to 2, and then 2, and then 3, and 3, etc. So that's kind of how you did, knew what exposure you were on and managed, where you were on the roll of film. So I'm going to try to capture me loading the film. Sometimes these things are a little tricky, but I'll do the best I can. See, this over here is where your film, your unexposed roll goes. It just slides in there, and there's a little slot that kind of captures the tab at the top of the spool, and you just roll it over and capture it on this other spool. This is the take-up spool, and this is actually geared to this knob on the top. So you can see as it twist the knob, it turns. And then basically once you get it caught in here and captured, you just wind it on until it starts pulling off the roll. And then when you get to a certain point, there's an arrow or something, and that's as far as you go, or you'll expose the film. Then you put the back on the camera, and then you twist it until it gets to the right number. So we'll see how hard this one is. So most of these are pretty standard, and they're not that hard, but sometimes they can be a little tricky, but we'll see. So essentially this film is just rolled up on a spool, and there's the only reason it's not being exposed now is because it's wound on there really tight, and it's light tight. But if you start messing around, that's the other part, and let the spool get unraveled, then you start letting light into the film itself, and that's a problem. So okay, we got the film in there started, and I'm just going to pull the leader out enough to get it into the slot on the take-up spool. And one of the tricks is you just kind of hold it down with your thumb as you're turning it so that it catches. A lot of this backing paper is really slippery, and sometimes it doesn't want to catch, and you have to kind of hold it down until it catches. Okay, looks like I'm doing okay so far. And here you go. This is what I was talking about the arrow. So here's your arrow here, and that's as far as I want to go. So I want to make sure I put the film back on. And the good thing is it only goes one way. It lines up with these notches, and so you can't put it on backwards. So it just snaps on with these clips. And you want to just try to make sure you keep the film tight as you're putting the back on. Okay, so you just want to make sure, and that's a problem with all these old cameras, is that you want to make sure it's on there tight and there's no light leaking through the seams. But that is an issue, so we'll just keep our fingers crossed it doesn't leak and that it functions the way it should. So now I'm just going to roll it over, and I'm going to do this off camera because I need a lot of light, and because it's hard to see through these red windows sometimes. And then I'll just come back and we'll finish up after I'm done. Alright, well, this is the first shot with this new camera, and we're coming to a spot here in North Lawrence that we come to quite a bit, this cool old house you can see behind us. I think this would be a good subject to shoot with this camera, just to kind of show what it's capable of doing. So here we go. Okay, just back to wrap it up. I was really actually quite pleased with the results for the first time out with this this little Falcon Miniature. Again, this is an 80-plus-year-old camera, and you know, surprisingly everything still works, and the pictures were really kind of cool. You know, it kind of creates what a lot of the people in the film world call lomography, which sort of is a new thing that celebrates the, you know, the mistakes and the abnormalities of certain cameras and lenses. And I think this is probably a perfect camera for that type of photography. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm actually really looking forward to getting this thing out more and shooting some more film through it. And you know, I've got some ideas, and I'm looking forward to getting back out again. So again, hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time. So out here.